time. Are you ready for story time?
Daddy.
Okay. The Daddy is going to read The King of Bees.
Daddy.
Yeah, Daddy's the King of Bees. All right, here we go. Henry and Aunt Leela live deep in the low country, where South Carolina reaches out and mingles with the salt water to form tidal creeks and marshes. Sometimes Henry felt like the whole world ended at the far edge of that water. Their small wooden house had a tucked-in porch and a ghost of white paint. Out back there was a vegetable garden, a hen house, an old shed, and Henry's favorite, the beehives. He felt something special for the bees. Henry could hardly wait to help with the bees. Aunt Leela finally agreed that he could watch her check the hive boxes. He waited eagerly at the door of the shed as she stepped into her bee suit and put on the hat with the net that protected her face. She let Henry carry the smoker she used to calm the bees. A bee won't sting you unless you get in the way of what she's doing, Aunt Leela told him as they made their way to the hives. But you got to stay a good ways back for now, she warned. Climb up on that stump while I'm working and you'll see everything just fine. Aunt Leela spoke softly while she lifted the frames to see how the bees were doing. What are you saying to them? Henry asked. I'm just giving them a little encouragement, and she spoke louder to be sure he couldn't hear her. You girls are busy fanning this morning and got to get that honey ready, don't you? And Henry listened to the bees. Aunt Leela, he called. When the bees hum, are they talking back to you? No, Henry, it's just the bees hum when they're working. If they have news to tell, they do their talking dance. That's how a bee shows her sisters where to find the best flowers. How come you always talk about the sister bees? Henry asked her. Don't they have any brother bees? Aunt Leela chuckled. Well, sir, there are a few boy bees to mate with the queen. They don't do much else except eat. For weeks, Henry pestered Aunt Leela about helping with the hives. There's plenty of time for that, she said. You got some growing to do first. He would have to be patient because Aunt Leela was particular about certain things. Henry remembered when she let him gather eggs from the hen house all by himself. That first day, he tried to take too many at a time and dropped one. And Aunt Leela wasn't upset, but her voice was serious. You got to be extra careful, Henry. Those eggs are food and money for us. He'd learned quickly how to slip the eggs from the nest. Now he enjoyed gathering them every day. One morning, Henry decided to explore the shed where Aunt Leela kept her beekeeping tools. He examined the uncapping fork and the hive tool, and he touched the smoker, and he opened the bottle of bee drops and sniffed them. And Aunt Leela had told him how much the bees liked the smell. His eyes came to rest on the bee suit. He was certain there was something magic about it. He just knew if he had one of his own, he could get closer to the hives and be talk like Aunt Leela. Henry left the shed and found Aunt Leela in the garden. How come the brother bees don't help their sisters, he asked. Can't the king bee make them do some of the work? Well, Henry, he said, the hives, like a big busy family that's got one queen and a whole bunch of sisters. And the sister bees clean the hive and bring in nectar and pollen to feed all the bees. And they make the honey and take care of the queen too. They don't have a king, he asked. No, I reckon the bee family gets along just fine with only a queen. Henry thought about this. Aunt Leela, it's not right for the sisters to do all the work. If I was a bee, I'd do a lot of things to help my sisters. Just like I help you with the hens and the garden. Day after day, Henry watched the sister bees buzzing in and out of the beehive boxes. And Henry imagined the bees doing their talking dance inside the hive. telling all the sisters where to find new flowers. One morning, Henry jumped off his stump and did a little dance of his own. He was telling his bees how to find the big patch of clover blooming on the backside of Mr. Craven's pasture. When he hummed and danced, Henry was a bee. He knew this for sure and certain when he saw sister bees buzzing in that clover patch the next day. Before long, Henry noticed a lot of activity around the hives. Aunt Leela noticed too. Looks like the bees are fixing to swarm, she said. I suspect we're about to get a new queen. What's going to happen to our queen, Aunt Leela? Henry asked. The old queen will fly off with a bunch of the sisters and search for a new spot to make another hive, she said. Will they really try to leave us? Henry asked. They could. We got to do all we can to keep them here, Henry. We depend on that, honey, about as much as those bees do. More and more sister bees flew out and circled the hives. I best hurry, she said. I'll set up another box over by the topilo tree. Henry wanted to do something to help. Maybe he could tell the bees where to find the new box, but he'd have to get closer to the hives. And he went into the shed and lifted Aunt Leela's bee suit off the peg and stepped into it. He pushed up the long sleeves and pulled up the legs until he could see his shoes. As he reached for the hat, he tipped over the bottle of bee drops, and some of the liquid spilled out, and Henry put the lid back on the bottle and returned it to the shelf. Then he wiped his hands on the bee suit and stumbled out of the shed. That, too, big bee suit, made it hard to walk, but Henry was determined to let the bees know about the new box. And he shuffled past the watching stump. This was the closest he had ever been to the hive boxes. And sister bees were buzzing in and out like never before. And the hum made his skin tingle. He stood still and listened, and the sound of it got inside of him. Slowly he began to move, careful not to trip, and he danced to tell the bees they didn't have to leave. Dancing in that bulky bee suit made Henry so tired. He had to go rest a while. He trudged across the yard, dragging it behind him like a shadow. He didn't notice the bees following him. Henry climbed the porch steps and stretched out on the bench. A low buzz caught his attention. He lay perfectly still and watched as the swarm of bees settled on the bee suit. And when Aunt Leela came onto the porch, she stopped onto the top step. No, what are you doing? Henry, she called softly. Look, Aunt Leela, he said. The sister bees decided to stay. Don't move, she whispered. I'll run fetch the smoker, just to be safe. And Henry hummed softly. Uh-oh. A few minutes later, Aunt Leela returned with the smoker, and she puffed clouds of white smoke over the bees, then carefully lifted the bee suit from Henry's legs and carried it away. When Aunt Leela came back, she said, I set the bee suit down by the box, and the bees went right for it. She pulled Henry close. I'm proud of you, Henry. The bees were leaving. Aunt Leela, I had to tell them about the new box. Were you scared when all those bees were on you? She asked. No, ma'am. I can bee talk now, just like you, he said. They came to say thank you because I was a helpful brother bee. Henry looked out toward the hives. Aunt Leela, those bees will stay with us. I just know it. I reckon they think I'm their king bee. Aunt Leela smiled and said, and I reckon you'll be a good one too. You like that story?
Home.
You ready for the next one?
Home.
Okay.
I love book.